You believe design can change the world. What role do young designers play in solving global challenges?
A new generation of designers, of course, I think has a more optimistic, future-looking approach. I think that's very important. One of the big reasons to be involved with parties and partners here in India is because we indeed think that India is a super important country and a super important community.
Today, we are honored to welcome Mr. Richard van der Laken at ISDI's Global Design Collective. He is a visionary, creative director, entrepreneur, and co-founder of Design Police, Gorilla, and What Design Can Do. His work continues to inspire creatives worldwide to use design as a force for positive change. Good afternoon, I'm Devansh. So, Mr. Laken, you believe design can change the world. What role do young designers play in solving global challenges, according to you?
Well, first of all, please call me Richard.
All right.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an important question. I think that, yeah, you could say that my generation and the generation behind me, we created this problem, and you you have to solve it. That is, of course, a very cynical point of view. I think it's more important that yeah, a new generation of designers, of course, I think has a more optimistic, future-looking approach. I think that's very important. I can imagine that when you're getting older, people also get maybe a bit more blasé or indeed a bit more cynical.
Definitely.
And I think it's extremely important with all those big issues at hand. You also have to dive into it head first. And I think that's something that a young generation is more capable of than a generation of people who are now 40, 50 or 60 years old.
Makes sense.
I think that's the main thing. It's all about the energy.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
about the ruthlessness.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense. All right. So, what do you think India brings to the table with respect to what Design Can Do's mission exactly?
Yeah, one of the big reasons to be involved with parties and partners here in India is because we indeed think that India is a super important country and a super important community. First of all, because you're, I think now the biggest country in the world with the most of people bigger than China, so that already makes it inevitable that India is a very important country. But what I also think, and that's of course also something we researched with our partners here in India, there's a lot of knowledge and a growing creative community and a creative industry. And that knowledge also goes back into the past. So, for example, when we're talking about circularity,
Yeah.
I think that not so long ago you could say that India was circular. And so that also has to do with old knowledge that is already here and that did not disappear.
Yeah.
For example, in the Netherlands or in Northwest Europe, we lost a lot of that knowledge. And I think that here there's more respect for that knowledge that's already there for hundreds of years. And we also see that back in, for example, the innovations that come from India in our, for example, in our challenge program. They are very often based on very simple, frugal ideas that make a big difference. So I think that apart from the big technological innovations and big technological developments that are happening in India, that's also goes without saying. Again, I think that is also very important, and that that can be an inspiration for the rest of the world.
So I think those ideas that you're talking about is what we call jugaad here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have to learn that word.
Jugaad.
Jugaad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so as a designer and creative leader, what inspires you outside of the design world?
Well, I've always been inspired by culture in general. So, art, fashion, um, film. I love to go to the movies, and there you always see these. How do you say that? When you go to the movies, you dive into another world, a world that somebody created, a director, a film director, actors, art directors, set makers. How do you say it? And that I always find that very inspirational. But as a child, I used to read a lot. So I read hundreds of books already when I was 12 years old. I always loved to read. And I think that is also an important connection to what I'm doing now. First of all, graphic design is a design discipline that's very much connected to language and text.
Yeah.
So writing has always been a sort of a passion for me, from writing my own poetry to writing opinion editorials for newspapers or whatever. But also, when you look at our work, whether it is for the Design Police or this Gorilla, this visual column, it's also a lot about copywriting. And we also always try to combine image with text. And I think that also you can how to say that, boil that down to my love for literature and the spoken word.
Definitely. So culture and literature are the two biggest things that inspires.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hi, Richard. Namaste.
Hello.
So, what is that one project or idea that inspired you in the field of design-driven change?
Ooh. You should have told me that before, because I don't know that. There are so many great projects. Do you mean something that I saw or something that I worked on myself?
Anything, because like you've been in this industry for quite a long time, and generally when students get into this field, they don't start off with this perspective because there are a lot of other aspects of life that you need to think about. So what changed your perspective and what made you think about it?
No, I can tell you something about that, of course. I think there are two moments. When I was, I graduated as a graphic designer, and I always, I was not really into detailed finesses of graphic design. I always have liked the bold statement in terms of content, but that's also translated into, I think, the designs that we make. They are not very refined. And so we try to make sort of a language out of that, own that specific visual language. But I also always have been very much inspired by people who make these bold statements, visual statements about big issues. And it's a long time ago. I think in the 90s there was this Benetton campaign.
Okay.
You know the fashion brand Benetton, and there was this photographer. He recently died. His name is Oliviero Toscani. So that's an Italian photographer who was also the art director and creative director of Benetton. And he made these campaigns. I advise you to look it up, because that was a groundbreaking campaign about a variety of social and environmental issues. So they said, okay, we have this brand with these shirts and these trousers and pants and whatever in nice colors, but we are going to change the scene. We have a lot of power because we have mass communication that we can use. So we are going to interpret the united colors of Benetton as a sort of a metaphor for bringing cultures and people from different races and countries and religions together.
Right.
So that started with campaigns with, again, with a variety of different people together. And that developed into a campaign that was about, for example, the AIDS epidemic, or abortion, or the climate crisis, etc., etc. And that really was an unprecedented campaign that lasted for years. And it was so powerful that when I saw that, I wanted to know more about it. And that's how I bumped into this Oliviero Toscani. And there was also, they also made a magazine that was called Colors.
Okay.
And as a graphic designer, that was also, that was so amazing. It was so beautiful and so, when we were talking about storytelling, for example, it was very visual, but also with super interesting topics and so well designed in the photography and the illustrations. Everything was of the highest level. And that was done by a guy, a graphic designer from New York. And he was a refugee from Hungary. Because when the Russians invaded, that was during the Cold War, you had many people from Hungary who fled to countries in Europe, but they of course also went to the United States. And this man is called Tibor Kalman. And so I also started to look up from, okay, what is this man doing? And then I also found out much more about American graphic design, which in fact resonates very well with the stuff that we do. Because American graphic design is also very straightforward, bold, as Americans are in a way. And when you look at our work, I'm not saying that it's American graphic design, because I think it's also very Dutch, but we are, I think, heavily influenced by that wave of amazing American graphic designers. And so I think what is very important, again, so it's Oliviero Toscani and Tibor Kalman and that whole story around the Benetton campaign.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So like he said, and you also said that our generation now has to solve the problems that are there currently. So how do you think young designers can make their work more socially, if environmentally responsible?
Well, first of all, you don't have to. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
I mean, don't feel obliged to do it. You must do it because you want to do it. And because you also get pleasure out of it, and you think it's great to do. If you see it as a big burden, then don't do it. I mean, there are many other fields of design that are also important, or you can make a great living out of it. But if you want to be socially engaged, then I would advise you to just start small at home in your own surroundings, so to say. And because that's where it all starts. So within your own community, or for example, if you work with a client, maybe you can see what you can do with this client. Or the way I always did it is starting my own projects. Yeah, so it was an initiative like Gorilla, or What Design Can Do is not, we don't do that for a client, but we started it ourselves. So if you do that, then you also have to be aware of the fact that you probably will not make a lot of money with it. And I think even in first instance, you will only have to put money in it. But again, if you think it's fun and great and nice and you're having a ball, then
Why not?
For me, that always has been more important. So my business partner Pepijn and I also have initiated all kinds of weird, foolish, bullshit projects because we just liked that and we just wanted to have fun and or I say that as I think I mentioned it before, because we wanted to kick in some doors and just make a statement or whatever, and we just like to do that. And then sometimes you have to take into account that nobody is waiting for that. Nobody is asking you to do that. So then if you just want to do it, then you also have to invest time and potentially also money in it to make that happen.
Correct.
So what we did, for example, we made our own magazines, or we organized exhibitions or parties or dinners with friends, and then with those dinners we created all kinds of stuff. Yeah, just because we liked to make things. And for us, it was always an opportunity to make things.
Yes.
In a way, what design can do is also for us an opportunity to make things. To create a campaign, to build a story, to organize an event, etc. It is also, of course, it's about the social impact of design, but it's also about making things.
To build more on that, looking ahead, what legacy do you hope what design can do leaves in the design community and beyond? Like, what can design actually do?
Yeah. Well, I always say that design does not have some kind of a magic stick. So we should not step into that trap that design is going to solve it all. But on the other hand, sitting on your hands and doing nothing, I find that very difficult. So what I hope with, if you can call it a legacy, that we are able to inspire people to do something, whatever that may be. And as a designer, I think you should use your skills, your talents, and try to move that into the right direction. But what the right direction is, that's of course up to you. I cannot decide that.
Yeah.
I am Shantanu Ghuryani. I am doing communication design like the three of us. And I would want to ask you, what role do you see what design can do is playing in terms of bridging the gap between design, policies, social change, or something else that you think it's, bridging gaps between?
Yeah.
Anything?
Well, I think the most important thing is that, I mean, the name is what design can do, but I think it always starts with an issue. We always, so for example, there is a waste crisis,
Right.
and we connect that with design.
Right.
There's a refugee crisis, and we connect that with design. So it's not design for the sake of design. I think that's the main thing for us, and that's of course also how we try to bridge that gap, so that people understand that there is this issue, and we need a lot of people and a lot of knowledge and energy to make that happen, and design is part of that. But it's not only about design. Indeed, the government also needs to create laws, and there's a lot of policy making at hand. And companies need to change their business model, etc. And for all those things, you can use design, or you can even make it more specific.
Right.
I think there's a very important role for the government to play. When you're, for example, looking at the waste crisis, things will only change if the government makes laws, and that companies need to follow that laws.
Follow the laws, yes.
That means that they have to change
Absolutely.
their business model, and have to change the products, etc., and the campaigns, go on, etc., etc. And if they want to change that in a good way, you need designers.
Yep.
So that's the way it should go. governments make new policy, companies implement those policies, and designers help them in making that beautiful, functional, desirable, etc.
Hi Richard, I'm
Hello.
Anisha. I am a communication design student as well. And I believe you've answered quite a few questions that I already have, but I still have more questions.
Great.
So, how can designers harness AI responsibly to create a future that is not just technologically advanced, but also socially equitable?
That's a big question. And in all honesty, I don't have the answer. Because I find it very hard to grasp this whole development of AI. Because that's your question. Huh? But what can we as designers do to make that a responsible development? I think that whole development is, you could say, almost too big to handle. And there are, of course, two schools. Huh? There's one school that says, no, it's amazing and it will help us in our development.
Right.
And of course, there's another school that says that it will eat us alive.
I see.
And I think it's both.
Yeah.
And of course, it's something we cannot avoid. We have to deal with it.
Right.
And I also know that many designers are afraid of it because they think it will ruin their business.
Steal their jobs.
Yeah. And that is on one hand true and on the other hand not. Because I think that for designers and creatives in general, it becomes more important that you have a good idea.
Well,
And that you are able to curate and that you are able to brief not a person, but that you can brief AI.
Yeah.
The prompting.
Prompt
The
giving.
prompting.
Yeah. That's so important.
So in first instance, I was also a bit from, oh my goodness, what is this? But now we, as with our design studio, we use it a lot. For example, programming and animation took us 3 weeks, and now 3 hours. And that's of course insane.
That's insane.
That is so great because
Yeah.
I was never very technical, so I always had to ask people from I want this animation. Can you make that for me? Now I can just quite literally ask the machine to do it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I recently read an article about it. Some kind of a philosopher in a magazine, and he also coined it in a very dystopian way. That the people who program will be the masters, and the people who use it will be the slaves. And that is, I think, also true.
Yeah.
So the question, how can design or designers make sure that this is a responsible development, I think that's almost impossible. I think it's not, I would not say that's not our role, but I don't think we have the power to do that. Of course, you can as a designer also maybe create things that, I think it's such a big development that maybe I come back to what I just mentioned. It's something that the government needs to pick up because it's so big. For example, in Europe, the European Union is going to make legislation on it. And if the government in India does the same, then there are already 2 huge economical blocks that try to regulate it in some kind of a way. Because in the United States, they don't regulate it. And but that also makes it a potentially super dangerous thing because nobody can be taken into account.
yeah.
Because there's no law,
They
there are
regulate
no...
the wrong things there.
And that makes it crazy.
Yeah.
But again, it also has a lots of benefits as well. It's of course also a super exciting development. But I am also a bit I don't know. Yeah, no, skeptical. I also really think it's great,
Yeah.
but I'm a bit afraid of what it can be in
So
the
you're
future.
wary of just whatever it could probably become like a superpower that somebody uses, like all of those movies that have already speculated that
Yeah,
AI.
yeah, exactly. Again,
Yeah.
that the programmers will be the masters and that I will be the slave.
Fair enough. Okay, so building on that, what mindset should students develop to become successful and impactful designers? Not just with AI, but just in general, what mindset do you think that we could?
No, I think it's important. What I just mentioned is that you really have to follow your gut feeling. So what do you really like to do? And also what are you talented? Where is your talent? And the talent is the space where you never look.
Right.
If you understand what I'm saying.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because you already do it. It doesn't hurt you. You already do it. That's the space where probably your biggest talents lie. And it would be great if you are able to recognize that, because then you suddenly can use it and be aware of that. When you are aware of your talent, that can also be very confusing. But if you are aware of that and you do that in a good way, then you can be a powerhouse. But the danger is that you want to achieve something that is not per se in the scope of your talent, and then you do it on perseverance,
Yeah.
which is also necessary sometimes. That okay, whatever happens, I'm just going to do it. But that needs to lie in the scope of your talent, because otherwise it will break you down.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So that's, I think, very, very. It maybe sounds a bit like a metaphoric
No,
conversation,
it actually
but
hits quite hard. Whatever you're saying, I'm able to relate to, because I have had quite a few fields that I've dabbled into and want to like dabble into in the future. But also, I really want to. I feel like I should. Like, this is just advice from you. I feel like I should just focus on what I'm really, really good at.
Yeah.
For example, research. As you've mentioned reading and literature, and I've done a lot of that when I was growing up and everything. So I'm really good at research because I read a lot. And I think I should just focus on that instead of trying to expand my portfolio into other things that I could do as well, which I could just
Yeah.
delegate to other people.
yeah,
That
again,
makes a lot of
at
sense.
the end, you're the only one who can decide that.
Exactly.
And you also have to bump into, as I said it, you have to bump into some walls once in a while,
Yeah.
so that you recognize it. Oh, wait a minute, this is not my talent.
Like a Roomba.
And then at a certain moment you will recognize it and you think, hey, but when I do this, then suddenly
That makes sense.
it swings.
Yeah. You've helped a lot in terms of whatever advice you've given to, I think, all of us. And we have a lot to take away from whatever you've said and think about when we go back home. And I think we're all very grateful for your time here and everything that you've told us. And ISDI as a whole, we're just like very glad that you've been here. And whatever you've said, you just feel like this very, you have so much wisdom in you and you're able to actually impart it when you speak. And that skill is very necessary when we're speaking to industry experts. And that's just been a very nice thing to have.
No,
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.